All right, let's bring in Noah Hamman, CEO of AdvisorShares. Noah, always good to see you. Do you back up the truck on FAANG? And I'm not talking about just buying a FAANG ETF. I'm talking about buying Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, and Google. I see some of these companies, and the quarters they're putting up are mind-blowing. And I'm not too sure. It's unclear what would bring the stocks down.
Yeah, I think nothing right now. I think they're going to continue to grow. That's where the strength in the market has been. I heard you guys talking earlier about the differences in different indices. The Russell small cap, the Russell 2000 being down about 10% year to date, S&P flat, but NASDAQ, where these stocks are mostly represented, are way up. And this is coming, keep in mind, off the heels of the advertising moratorium on Facebook. So I guess so much for that little protest that was supposed to go on there.
You know, you have been a longtime bull of cannabis stocks,
Yes.
Noah. We haven't talked about them lately. Have you changed your outlook or your holdings on cannabis stocks during the pandemic?
You know, I've not, and if anything, kind of doubled down a little bit, right? When you look at what has grown in this space, it's certainly the big box retailers, the tech stocks, like Brian was just mentioning. But look at U.S. multi-state operators such as Curaleaf, which just finished an acquisition that now makes them the largest cannabis company in the world, and a company like Trulieve, based out of Florida, but operating in multiple states. Those stocks are up 80% this year. They're considered essential businesses. They've been open during this pandemic. It's a growing space. We look at that as similar to what alcohol was pre-prohibition. We're in the early stages. Volatile. Be careful in your portfolio, but a great opportunity for sure.
Noah, is it any surprise that the cannabis stocks are rising as Joe Biden is leading in many polls to take over as president? And what would a President Joe Biden mean to the cannabis industry?
Well, historically, he's probably not been the biggest advocate for it, but I think the environment that we're in, the feedback and the advice that he's getting, it does feel like a Democratic administration is going to be very favorable for cannabis.
What about I've been hooked on these small cap stocks, not doing much of anything, while the rest of the market seems to be doing well, particularly tech. What's your feeling on these mid and small cap stocks right now, and what's it going to take to have them participate in the rally?
Sure. I mean, it's been a little frustrating. Typically, that's the areas you can go to find a little more alpha for your portfolio. You're taking on more risk, but over time, you're getting more return for it. And that hasn't been the case. And part of it, I struggle with sort of thinking, all right, with the environment that we're in, it's killing small businesses, but the small businesses that it's really killing typically aren't the ones that are public. But there is that trickle up, I think, a little bit, right? Small independent businesses have been decimated in this environment, but I think it's been tougher for smaller companies to compete. And so I think that's in part the struggle you've seen with that category.
No, I want to get back to FAANG stocks. Is it time to change that acronym to PFANG? Look at Pinterest. I mean, the stock is ripping higher, massive quarter after the close. Do you follow that name? And if not, but how do you play their momentum?
I don't follow it, but I don't see them all that different from any other. You almost can kind of compare them to a Netflix, right? When you think about this streaming content, but it's curated by the users. So I think, it's strong opportunities for those stocks for now. This is where people are spending their time. It's what they're doing. I don't know what changes that, even if we find a solution for the virus, whether it's a treatment or a cure. Facebook's still going to grow. Amazon's going to continue to grow. I think Pinterest is a good company. I think all those opportunities are going to continue to be strong.
Noah, it is hard to believe, but we are less than 100 days away from the presidential election. Is that now starting to be part of the conversation with clients? Are they talking about maybe rejiggering things as they look ahead to the election?
Sure, absolutely it is. I mean, as much as, we were just mentioning earlier, Biden might being positive for the cannabis space. I think overall, though, right, given some of their policies, taxing, things like that, it's going to make it a little bit more challenging. I think some of the things that you've seen ease in the marketplace over the past 4 years will change dramatically. And so, yeah, people are nervous. I don't know that it means that the economy is going to be bad, right? I think the economy will start to clean up over time as we deal with this virus, but the market may be different. It's sort of the opposite, I think, of what we're running into now. The market's still at all-time highs when, the GDP numbers you guys mentioned earlier are horrible. The unemployment numbers are horrible. It wouldn't surprise me to see some of that flip in a new administration, right? The economy starting to get much better at its core, but maybe the market not reflecting that as well. And it would, for us, at least in our conversations, causing investors to think about hedging themselves as they get into the election.
Do you have any under the radar ETFs that people are starting to get interested in, or they could in fact play the election?
Yeah, there's probably a couple of ways. So we're active managers, so not surprisingly, we believe in active management. But in particular, it's stock selection matters, right? You guys talk about it on the show all the time, the companies that are doing well and the companies that are not. And there's such a big disparity of that, at least that we've seen this year. So we like concentrated managers that are focused on a handful of high quality stocks, companies with big moats. You've heard that term before. So we use something like CWS. It's a focus equity strategy. There's only 25 positions in the portfolio. So it's the very best picks from that portfolio manager and nothing else. He's not trying to hug a benchmark or any of those things. And many of the companies, you'd be surprised, are sort of boring but tried and true companies. Moody's is in the portfolio. Sherwin-Williams is in the portfolio. Trex is in the portfolio. All these companies are doing really well, even in the current environment that we have. So we like stock selection on one hand, but as I mentioned, getting a little bit hedged as you get into the election cycle. Raising a little bit of cash isn't the worst idea, maybe 1% at a time. Or if you want to be more aggressive, definitely consider hedging your portfolio. We've talked about those solutions in the past as well, but that's kind of the barbell approach that we're talking to people about positioning themselves for the election.
What about healthcare? Biopharma, traditionally a pretty risky area to be in, but how can you not be in it given the fact that you have so many companies now in the race to find a vaccine for COVID-19, and also telemedicine going through the roof? We had the CEO of Teladoc Health on a little earlier talking about the growth he expects for his company there. So are you in healthcare, and if so, where?
We are in healthcare. That's a bit more of a value play for us right now. So our equity team with DoubleLine that we work with on the DBLV ETF, that's a big component of their exposure. And it's kind of interesting, right? In some ways, that's a play for the next, couple of decades, right? With aging baby boomers and Gen X needing more and more medical services. So you've got that. That's certainly a big growth opportunity. But what you've got going on in the biopharma space and the competition for a solution for this virus, you want to be careful around a couple of different areas. You've got a Moderna that's highly valued right now. I'm not sure that's going to provide that great of an investment opportunity for investors. In that portfolio, we like a company more like AstraZeneca that we know is also working on the space and not so expensive from a multiple perspective, so a little bit more of a value play. But even that, be careful. You'll start to see a lot of headlines around the profitability of finding that solution, right? If there's any sort of price gouging going on, that's going to be a real problem and a negative thing for some of those companies. But nonetheless, it'll be tons of revenue opportunity, certainly in the short term to find the solution, but healthcare we love for the long term.
No, I was just counting. I think you broke your record for the most number of stocks mentioned. I'm counting about 10 or about 11 or 12. You were at 8 before. Very impressive, as always. But let's leave it there. Noah Hamman, CEO of AdvisorShares. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, you too.